Thank you again so much for being here. You are our first Instagram Live for our overall and for our Julia Rogers Research Prize winners. So for everyone who is joining us, welcome today. My name is Liz Johns, and I am the Teaching and Learning Librarian, and today I am interviewing Andres Cordoba Arroyo. Did I say that correctly? Close enough?
Cordoba, yeah.
Cordoba, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
My Spanish is a little rusty. Andres is the graduate student winner of the Julia Rogers Research Prize. And for those of you who don't know, the Julia Rogers Research Prize is an annual research prize competition for outstanding research by Gouger students using library resources. Andres is a graduate student in education, correct?
Mhm.
Education, okay. And his winning entry is called Adverse Childhood Experiences, Childhood Trauma as a Source of Health and Educational Disparities. Now, this project was initially created for Ed 631, Psychological and Social Characteristics of At-Risk and Diverse Learners. So thank you again for being with us today. We're so glad that you're willing to talk to us and share information about your project, and congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm so ready.
Okay. So first, can you just describe the project for us?
Sure. So for this class, like you mentioned, excuse me, at 631, which is one of the main courses or one of the 4 courses for the At-Risk and Diverse Learner specialization. So Professor Tammy Coyd asked that we basically come up with a kind of like an integrative literature review on a topic that was of importance to us. And prior in the course, so this was a culminating assignment, so it was kind of like the final paper for the assignment app, environmental and social factors that may put a child or student at risk. And at risk, and by at risk, we mean a student who is basically not able to fulfill their full potential due to several factors. It could be at home, it could be environmental, it could be social structures that prevent a student from fully succeeding. And so for this course, we basically we were asked to pick a topic. And so I just chose adverse childhood experiences because I have been exposed to it prior as an undergrad and even as a grad student. So yeah, that was a little bit of why we had to write that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there anything in particular that inspired you for that project?
Absolutely. So I've always been interested in like an interdisciplinary approach to solving problems, and that has been something I've been trained with since being an undergrad. So I went to Goucher as an undergrad as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is going to be my 6th year at Goucher.
Wow.
And so as an undergrad, I was a public health minor. And in that, to fulfill requirements for that minor, I had to take many sociology courses. And in the sociology courses, in one of those, I became introduced to the idea of like adverse, what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And so as I remember taking one of the courses taught by Professor Patty Greenberg, and she introduced this idea of this theory to us, and she showed us a TED Talk by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who at the time was a pediatrician and the founding clinician or doctor of the Bayview Child Health Center in San Francisco.
Okay.
Currently, she is the Surgeon General for the state of California. So a lot of her work has been around this idea of, or like trying to find out the correlation between trauma and how it affects health.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I thought that it could also be applicable to educational settings, because if a student's health is not, optimal, then it could definitely influence the academic outcomes as well. So
absolutely, yeah.
There was definitely a correlation between personal interest in health, and and also trying to find a way to connect that to education. And
right. Yeah, that's really interesting that you were able to kind of put all of those different things together, use your undergraduate experience, think a little interdisciplinary. It sounds like a really interesting project, which is why it won the graduate prize. So what challenges did you encounter when you were working on this project?
Oh, that's a great idea. I initially, my approach to this assignment or to this paper was to find a way to also connect it to higher education, more specifically, and not just education in general.
Okay.
And that's more my interest, working with college students in higher education, in the higher education setting. Now, a lot of my peers in graduate school are teachers in the K through 12 setting, so I always try to find a way to learn from their experiences too, while also trying to expose my experience or to share my experience to them as to how the topics we learn are applicable to the higher ed setting. And so one of the main issues, or one of the main, I guess, research problems that I encountered when working on this was finding research on the correlation to higher ed. You know, so finding basically having this idea, but not allowing, or the research that's available, not allowing me to fully complete that, and having to rework my main idea to basically be more general and see how it is that it affects, the K through 12 setting or students in general as it relates to their, health and cognitive development and physical development. So. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question that we didn't plan for. Where do you plan to take this in the future, or what do you plan to do after you finish at Goucher?
That's an excellent question. I definitely do see myself finding a path where I can combine all of my areas of interest. And it's hard because a lot of people ask me this question and expect me to say, you're going to be a teacher, or you're going to be something, that's like very common. I think public health is something that I'm very interested in. And it's a field that encompasses a lot of like education, the science. I majored in biochemistry as an undergrad. So there's a lot of like different aspects to my interest and my passions that will come into play as to how, or will influence what I'll do after, Goucher. I think Goucher has prepared me in excellent ways for me to be ready to, solve problems in ways that can be interdisciplinary or include a multitude of approaches. So yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. I wish I could be like, I want to be a teacher, but
no, you don't have to. No, you don't have to say that at all. No, and I think what you said about Goucher being preparing you for so many different options is wonderful. Education is not just about being a teacher in a K through 12 classroom. There are educators working in all sorts of different fields, doing different things, and it sounds like you really started to explore some of that in this paper and in your work at Goucher. So don't apologize for that. That's great. We need more people with educational backgrounds going out and doing work in different fields in the world. I definitely believe that. So good luck. I think you're going to do great.
Thank you.
All right, so how has the library made a difference in your time at Goucher? You mentioned the library resources a little bit, and you had some challenge finding some of those things for higher ed. But either related to this project or in general, how has the library made a difference for you?
I think the library as both as a physical space and also as a resource where, the librarians are there to help. Both aspects of the library have been crucial to my success as a student. I'm a person who needs a different physical space. Situation has forced me to make my home that space, which I'm learning, and it's something that I may get used to. But going back to the library, I think it has been that source of like a physical space and resources that allow me to start research on any topic that I may be assigned to in a course, or something that I may find personal interest in. So I think that the library has been just that space where actually a lot of of time at the library has been spent building relationships with peers, and being challenged to think in different ways. So the library itself has a lot of meaning to my personal growth, but also my professional and academic growth. So.
Okay. So you were talking about the library as a place. What is your favorite place at the library?
That's a great question, because a lot of my friends, when I was an undergrad and I used to spend a lot of time at the library, I would always, they would always ask me where I'm at, where I'm located. And I would always tell them the long table, just because I didn't know what to name the long table. And I would say the long table. And they were like, what? But it's this table that is like facing like the downstairs. So I think recently they've added some computers to this table. It is kind of like
on the third floor.
I'm sorry?
On the third floor?
Yeah, third floor. It's facing the steps that go down to the first floor.
Okay.
So it's kind of facing the wall, but there's like a space in between that's like...
Right. It's not like your nose is right up against the wall. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think that's like my spot. I feel like it allows me to still hear some noise, but because I'm looking at the wall kind of from the distance, it kind of makes me focus more.
Okay.
So I think that's my definitely favorite spot. Now, at the beginning of of my time at Goucher back in 2014, my favorite spot was the chairs. I think they're called womb chairs.
Yes.
Yeah. So those chairs were definitely my favorite spot. I was like, that was something I never experienced prior to going to Goucher. So I was like, what? This is so cool. It's so comfortable. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite library resource?
Favorite library resource? I think journals online have been, crucial to everything. Access to journals, and the ability for me to do that online has been great, because I can do that, at home or at the library. In terms of resources at the library itself, I think the help desk, or I think there's a research librarian who sits near the help desk. I think those people have been really important for when I'm stuck on a project and I need guidance on where to go and where to take a project. So, yeah. Yeah,
and we're not sitting at the help desk right now because we're also in our homes, but we are online on chat on the library website, and you can always email us too. So as you're finishing up, you and anybody else who's listening today, the research librarians, we're still here. We can still help. So I'm glad to hear that. So our last question for you is, what advice do you have for other students who may enter the competition next year?
That's a great question. I think I've always wanted to apply, but I always kind of had this doubt of what would be worthy of a prize, of like even a submission. I think the current work that I chose was chosen because it was personally relevant to my story as a person, but also to the work that I want to do. And I think a future applicant should find work that they're passionate about, because the more passionate you are about a topic or a paper or an assignment, the more time you're going to spend on it, and the better the outcome, whether not really on the grade in terms of grading, but in terms of how much you learn, how's your research. So I think finding a topic that you're interested in and have a passion for is definitely a good first step to future applicants. Second, I would reach out to your professors. Now, this could be undergraduate professors or for fellow graduate students, their graduate professors, to see if those professors have thoughts on what could be submitted, based on your work, based on their feedback. In graduate school, a lot of the feedback is really long, really extensive, and a lot of it is like, well, work on it again and resubmit. So I think just find, and in that process, you build a relationship with your professor that allows you to, say it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to fix and, submit. So just submit something that has been revised. I wrote something else down. Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to just select one assignment or one piece of work to submit, and you can submit several and allow the committee to select, if one of your work is better than the other, allow that to happen. That's an option. I did it. I submitted more than one paper this semester.
Oh, did you?
And one of those, won. So you never know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think those three things are essential. And then third, just apply. Just submit the application. Work on it, revise it, but make sure you actually follow through. All the way to submission, because it is hard. It can be hard, especially with everything going on and balancing work and your still other commitments of school. So it can be hard, but just apply. There's nothing really to lose. I feel like if anything, it's feedback. So it's good.
Good. That's great advice. Thank you so much for that. And thank you again for being with us here today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about the prize, your paper, your experience, anything right now?
I guess, what else could I share? I guess what I want to share with in regards to this topic or the idea of adverse childhood experiences is that a lot of it for me has been to understand the past, but also to look forward to intervention in ways that we can prevent children from experiencing trauma first. And for those who have experienced trauma, to create interventions for their success, both in health outcomes and educational outcomes, because they're interrelated, like I've said prior. And so, yeah, as a person who studies at-risk and diverse learners, this is something that is of huge importance to me, and I feel like it should be to a lot of other people, just those especially who are in positions of power to determine educational and health policy that can influence outcomes for everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you so much. This is so exciting. I could do this all day, honestly.
I know. I feel like I could talk to you about this too. As an educator and someone who studies education, I feel like I have so many other things that I want to say, but I know that you're busy and there's other things that you want to do today, I'm sure. And I really appreciate you doing this and kind of being our Instagram interview guinea pig today.